What is up, YouTube? Jason here. And let me first start off by saying Happy New Year to you all. It's January 1st, a little after 1 p.m. I worked yesterday evening, so not too much celebrating to be had on my part, but still, nonetheless, I'd like to wish you guys a Happy New Year. 2026. See what the year brings. I'm currently outside of the community college I formerly attended. I received my associates from, and I'm here freezing my nuts off to make a video about another very popular author, key figure in the modernist movement. A lot of his work was published posthumously, meaning following his death by a close friend of his, and so that today I am talking and making a video on Franz Kafka. Here I have the complete stories of Franz Kafka, the short stories of Kafka. This is excluding his novels, his larger works, but really what I read by Kafka recently, and also what I read him in college for the first time in modernism, in taking modernism. I read the Metamorphosis. I believe it was modernism. The Metamorphosis, right? And then recently, just yesterday, I finished reading The Penal Colony, In the Penal Colony by Kafka. And so I'm going to read to you a bit biographical information about Kafka and also sort of his writing style. I'm going to make mention to the adjective Kafkaesque, used to describe literature that mirrors Kafka in his writing style. And then I'm going to hopefully just summarize but rant about In the Penal Colony, and some maybe just broadly about the two works I have read about Kafka, and why I find him interesting. Obviously, he's in that bubble of modernist writers that I hold sort of near and dear, I guess, or I am so fascinated by, and who really have written literature that I believe is worth reading, and also very much piques my interest. Literature breaking with tradition, and literature that involves disillusionment and sort of a feeling of alienation and being lost, even though despite knowing exactly where you are, but more so internally lost, I guess. And so, let me just get into it, right, before I rant myself to the point of running out of storage on my phone, okay? So Franz Kafka, his lifespan, he was born in 1883 in Prague, then part of Austro-Hungarian Empire, now the Czech Republic. He was born in 1883, in the summer of 1883, and then died in 1924. So did not live all that long at all, about midway through life's journey, and the reaper, the harrow came for Kafka, right? So born in Prague, then part of Austro-Hungarian Empire, now the Czech Republic. He was born to German-speaking Jewish parents and lived amongst a predominantly Czech-speaking city. This, in combination with an overbearing, ego-driven father who is concerned with sort of upholding societal expectations. And you see this mirrored in Kafka's work, of course, oftentimes what the protagonist is up against is living, he's in this irrational setting where he is sort of the only sane one in a way, and he's up against these societal expectations that just have ballooned into being totally nonsensical. Perhaps in the beginning their aim was noble, in the name of progress and expansion and development, right? But have ballooned into something totally nonsensical and tipped over into the realm of being a detriment, I guess. But anyway, so yeah, this in combination, his heritage, right? Him being born to German-speaking Jewish parents, so you have a paradox right there, kind of. But also amongst a predominantly Czech-speaking city. So this sort of internal, this divide, this division, this in combination with an overbearing, ego-driven father who never saw eye to eye with Franz, added to a deep sense of alienation often present in his work. So that's sort of what I just touched on. Much of Kafka's work was published posthumously by his literary executor, Max Brod. I guess that's how you say his last name, Brod. Max Brod met Kafka at the law school the two were attending and formed a close friendship, which ultimately served, to preserve Kafka's body of unpublished work. And then there's an anecdote that in 1939, when the Nazi invasion was taking place, and Max Brod, Kafka had already passed away, right? Because he passed away back in 1924. As Brod is fleeing, he flees to somewhere in Palestine, I believe I read. When he's fleeing, he takes he has Kafka's work. He takes Kafka's work with him, right? And so this is how important preserving Kafka's work was to Brod. I really hope I'm saying that right. And thank the literary gods, I guess, because without him, as I will soon tell you, we would not have a large majority. Kafka published some things during his lifespan, but a large percentage of it, or quite a lot of it, he left unpublished and did not want to. He didn't want it to ever see the light of day. So Kafka's body of Brod serves, to preserve Kafka's body of unpublished work. In breaking with his promise to Kafka, Brod ignored his late friend and author of The Trial in the Castle. He ignored Kafka's wish for his writings to be burned following his death. Opposingly and courageously, he safeguarded his friend's text and saw to their publication in the years after Kafka's death in 1924. Kafka died from tuberculosis at the relatively young age of 40. What would he have, and this is in wondering, should Kafka have lived and never got tuberculosis, never spent those years, spent that time in the sanitarium, and remained healthy and wasn't such of a delicate character, and didn't fall into poor health. What would he have went on to write? But the thing is, we can never know. And would he have changed his mind? And if he would have went on to write, perhaps, and outlived Brod, perhaps his work wouldn't have gotten published. So it may have been a blessing to readers, I say, and enjoyers of Kafkaesque literature and Kafka's work, that he did die middle-aged, relatively young, because who knows what would have happened should he have outlived Broad or even lived a longer time, and retained some agency regarding his body of work. He may have chose to never release it, and or the woman that he meets, I forget her name, but if she then takes control of his estate and his work, maybe she then does honor his wishes and chooses not to release such a fruitful body of work. So anyway, but thanks to a chance encounter, like I said, with Broad, which blossomed into a beautiful friendship, the stories he did write during his life live on in the minds of his readers and continue to inform on our understanding of modern society and the function we serve as being a part of it. Kafka's writing style is so unique and prolific, it garners its own adjective used to denote literature that mirrors it. Kafkaesque may be described as depicting the human struggle against a bureaucratic whirlwind of nonsense and apathy. His work evokes feelings of alienation, hopelessness, and powerlessness. When reading, it's impossible to say where Kafka is leading us. The space is undefined due to its lack of foundation of prior knowledge. A series of surreal and sensational events take place inside a setting that remains indifferent towards their occurrence. What is familiar is the feeling of being lost in a world where you're the only sane person left. Okay? So sort of that concludes what I wrote about his biography. Yeah, I think that sort of sums it up. Kafkaesque. You have sort of a surrealism, almost like a dream, but then is sort of vexed to nightmare in this bureaucratic struggle, right? You're sort of up against these bureaucratic giants that are totally apathetic and indifferent towards sort of such a puny cogwheel, right, in the larger machine of things. They're indifferent towards you, a worker bee, and could care less, if you die off and they have to replace you. And alienation is another characteristic of Kafka's writing. Is another motif found in Kafka's writing. So what I wanted to talk about, like I said, I just read in the Metamorphosis, how you see this played out, how this sort of struggle against bureaucracy and sort of surrealism, sensational events, sort of how they play out is Gregor Samsa. He wakes up one morning and he is he's transformed into a dung beetle. And what's sort of ironic about this, and what is comedic about this, is he is more concerned with how is he going to make it to work, and what is his boss going to say, and how his family may now disown him because he can no longer work and help provide for the family, and over just the metamorphosis into a fucking bug, right? For lack of a better word, or better words, he was just transformed, metamorphosized into a dung beetle. I think that may be up for discussion what bug he was transformed into, but yet again, the more pressing matter at the heart the more pressing matter for Gregor at that moment in time is how is he going to make it work? He has to tell his boss, and his boss actually shows up there, and he's pounding on the door. You imagine you miss work and you're a no-call, no-show, and as a result, your boss shows up to your door, and this is, sort of bureaucracy manifested, taking on sort of a life of its own, reimagined into, sort of reimagined and sort of sensationalized and maximized, I guess, whatever. It totally inflated, right? If it were, allowed to spin out of control, and by doing so, we sort of see the ridiculousness that is behind such bureaucracy, right? And keeping with these expectations that you can't miss, how insane it is that you can't miss a day of work, or you have to fear that you're going to be fired. Of course, there's a whole culture around Japanese salarymen who work however many hours during the week, and then on the weekend go and get drunk with their boss, and then just don't even feel as so exhausted and so lacking in time that they pass out drunk on the street, still in full dress uniform, still in work clothes, in collared shirts, white collar, and yeah, so you see, you certainly see that, you see the parallel between Kafka's writing and sort of real life, even if it is surreal, sensational. But anyway, so that's sort of the metamorphosis, and it's sort of, his family disowns him, essentially. Gregor's family disowns him. The sister helps him a bit. She's really the only one who's helping him. But otherwise, the family is just totally repulsed and grossed out by him. The few times that he gets loose, he's chased back into his room with a broom, and they're throwing apples at him. And then the lodgers, find out about Gregor, I think. And I don't know if they threaten to leave. If Gregor's allowed to stay, then they leave, and obviously this is a form of income for the family, for the Samsa family. So they have to sort of decide between their son, who is sort of no longer their son, but where is the sympathy for Gregor? Really, all that has gone out of the door. So, yeah, like I said, that feeling of being lost in this world where you're the only sane person left, where all compassion and sympathy has flew out the door, and you're left wandering through this labyrinth of indifference and apathy, and you're sort of wondering if there's any light at the end of this maze, or if you're just slowly wading through this putrid swamp until you finally reach the gates of hell. And I think that's somewhat the question Kafka's posing. And are we able to regain control of our lives and question the mechanisms at play, and to ask, where is the value in such a system that doesn't value us? Where is our worth? Is there meaning? Where does our fulfillment lie? How fulfilled do we feel? How fulfilled are we existing in such such a system. And you see Kafka, of course, he's a socialist, and you see this, you know, present within his work, or socialist, perhaps ideals, ideas being represented in his work. And then so in the penal colony, okay, you have 4 characters, and we have another interesting story, a bit of a surreal story, ideas that exist outside of the realm of reality. You know, so that's why I say you don't really know where Kafka's leading you. But they're really not that far detached. It's not necessarily like science fiction. These are things that could exist. So maybe perhaps like a parallel universe. And because there are ideas that aren't present in this reality, and because there is no foundation of prior knowledge that we can draw from about the series of events that occur in a Kafka novel or story, we feel so far removed from Kafka's world, or we might think that we are. But in reality, this is just a different manifestation of this exact same pieces of the puzzle, right? Just arranged a little differently. This is the exact same work of art, but perhaps just using a different series of, a different combination of colors and a slightly different configuration. We are more similar than perhaps initially perceived. Or then, that we may think we're not so similar, but we are. Okay, sorry. Anyway, so yeah, in the penal colony, you have this explorer who is visiting this penal colony, right? This colony where prisoners are exiled, and then you have you have this divide between exiles, I guess, and guards who are meant to keep things in order. And you have this officer. The short story consists of 4 characters: the explorer, the officer, the condemned man, and the soldier. Okay, so obviously the soldier, but really the whole dialogue that exists occurs with perhaps exception to the final bit of the story, where the condemned man sort of comes to life and gets a second wind, and he has this back and forth with the soldier, but it's not really too present. It's not the chief subject at the time. It's more so observed from the sidelines, from the perspective of the explorer. So anyway, the soldier, it's really this conversation and this meddling of ideas between the explorer and the officer. You have a new way of thinking and a contemporary way of thinking embodied in the explorer, and then you have sort of an old barbaric and perhaps a bit more inhumane way of thinking that matches with the old world, I guess, embodied in the officer. And the soldier is an extension of the officer, right? He's just like his third arm, I guess, and so he's his third and fourth arm and third and fourth leg, I guess. He's just there to serve the officer's commands. But yeah, in the story, you have this apparatus, and that's how the story begins, is the officer is remarking about this beautiful piece of technology, this apparatus. And we come to find out that, as I mentioned, there's a condemned man. This apparatus is essentially a piece of execution equipment. It's equipment that is used to carry out executions of men who have been condemned to death for transgressing against a certain commandment that are meant to be abided by within this penal colony. And what we find troubling throughout the story is all that it takes to be executed. The reason this certain particular condemned man is being executed is because he was supposed to stand at attention, or he was supposed to wake up every hour at the top of the hour and salute on the other side of this one officer's door. And one night the officer was curious if this condemned man was actually keeping with his orders, and he found him sleeping. And so the officer then tells us during, before his execution, that his guilt is evidence enough, his guilt is sort of reason and justification enough for his execution. Okay. But anyway, so yeah, you have this apparatus, and it consists of three parts. You have the bottom, which is the bed, which the condemned man is strapped to. Okay, you have leather straps. You have a felt gag that goes in the prisoner's mouth, so he can't, he's not screaming. And then you have the middle layer, which sort of protrudes from the top, I guess, which is called the designer. And apparently it it's compared to a harrow, which is farming equipment, which is, I guess, like farming equipment that consists of teeth, like metal teeth, right, that sort of till and break up soil. And so then you have the harrow that are these glass prongs, I guess, that hold these needles. And you have 10s, 20, I don't know how many exactly, teeth that are coming down. And so you imagine you have this man strapped to this bed, you have a series of needles coming down, right, from the top. And then the very top is called the designer. And I guess that is what, like the name suggests, it designs the pattern. Because what these teeth are doing is they're inscribing words onto the condemned man's body. First on his back, and then he is flipped over, and then on his, on his torso, on his front, chest, stomach. And what is inscribed on him is the commandment that he has broken. The reason he is being condemned is carved into his flesh. And he is not told, the condemned man is not told. Essentially, this officer serves as the judge and the jury. And he doesn't tell the condemned man why he is being executed. But rather, the condemned man is meant to read in his flesh, in the carving, once it has been carved into his body, he is meant to read it off of his wounds, right? His wounds are meant to tell him the reason for his execution. And then so this execution takes place over the course of many hours, like 12 hours or something like that. After 6 hours or something, the felt gag, or maybe it was 2 hours, the felt gag is removed, and because he no longer has the will or strength to scream. There is this rice water or something like that is placed at the front near his mouth, near the condemned man's mouth, so he may lap up this water. And yeah, it's a really sophisticated piece of equipment that serves the function of executing a man, torturing him to death in an artistic way, which is really quite cruel. But we think of, oh, this sounds insane. Maybe you don't. Maybe you see the genius of Kafka here at work. Especially if you read a lot of ironic text or anyway, yeah. So we think this is so far removed from our reality. But if you know anything about history, you know that it's not. So with the Industrial Revolution, of course, comes it takes society from primarily an agrarian one, right? Localized farming and very much dependent upon the weather, etc. In collaboration to an industrialized series of nations that have optimized production, in terms of food, cultivating land, farming, clothing, producing housing, affordable housing, medicine, everything is optimized that you can think of. And of course, also is done so for profit. But this occurs in the late, mid to late 1700s, and only continues to, evolve and advance. And technology only continues to evolve and advance. But with this, right, humans don't only get better at feeding others and themselves and clothing themselves and building housing for everybody, but they also get better at killing one another. Of course they do. So yes, not only is farming optimized, but the war machine, right, is optimized as well. And you see the harnessing of nuclear power, energy, uranium, plutonium, whatever. I'm not entirely. Marie Curie, I think is her last name. And she isolates radioactive isotope, and which ultimately leads to her demise. Ironically enough, right? Her life's work ends up killing her. But anyway, and we, what do? We're able to produce a bomb that can vaporize 1 million plus people, a single bomb. The Nazis produce, death camps where their 6 million Jews are exterminated, and they're thrown into showers. Warm water opens up their pores, and then Zyklon B is pellets of poison are dropped through a little, window at the top of these showers, and people are poisoned to death, and then bodies are burned. Watch Schindler's List, and you'll see it's a utterly humbling film. But anyway, not about I'm sort of digressing, but it's all aimed at the point of there is this mechanized violence that is present within there is this mechanized violence that evolves and is breathed life into with alongside the Industrial Revolution, and this Kafka showcases this brilliantly, and so really the story is about this way of executing prisoners has begun to, in the penal colony, fallen out of fashion, popularity. The old commandant has passed away, and this current officer who is overseeing all executions at the hands of this apparatus, he is really the only one who is enthusiastic and sort of continues to uphold this old tradition. And this is seemingly his life's work, even though the old commandant is the one who is credited with its invention. He was there. He was the helping hand that sort of helped to put the pieces together, essentially. And when he's showing the blueprints to the explorer, and he's asking him to read it, he's washing his hands before he's pulling the blueprints out. He won't even let the explorer, if the explorer gets too close, he sort of pulls the blueprints away so the explorer doesn't smudge or, make a mess of them. Because this is really coveted, this is a really coveted piece of technology. And this is what gives his life meaning. It's sort of sickening in a way, right? Because what gives his life meaning is a piece of equipment that is meant to artistically torture somebody over the course of hours to the point of unconsciousness and death, eventual death. Through letting blood and bleeding out. The wound channels just keep getting deeper and deeper until the person is bled to death, I guess. And so, this is a... He also tells of the stories in the old times, right, when... Let me see if I can find it. In the old times, when he speaks of it so nostalgically, when children, when the entire colony sat around or came together, as and this was like really this was entertainment for everybody to behold. And let me see. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't want to keep flipping because I may not be able to find it. But yeah, anyway, so he speaks of it so nostalgically, as in the past when the old commandant and the entire colony would gather around and watch the executions. Now the new commandant doesn't really, he thinks it more barbaric. And so what things are coming to is this explorer has been brought to the colony to give his opinion on what he thinks of such an apparatus existing, and people still being executed in such a dramatic and violent fashion. And the current officer believes that, depending upon his verdict, the explorer's verdict, the commandant is going to use this as an opportunity to discontinue this mode of execution. And with that discontinuation of this mode of execution, also his sort of meaning is extinguished from his life, and now what does he do? But also this, I guess, brings into question his guilt, his own yeah, his own guilt, and if what he was doing was incredibly wrong, because at the very end, when we see um, the explorer, he doesn't budge, and he says, this is even though you make such a strong case, and I really respect your conviction, and but I can't, I won't let this sway me. I'm totally against whatever this is, and it's inhumane, and it's torture, and so what does the officer do? Well, he lets the prisoner go free. He lets the condemned man go free, whose execution was just about to begin, I think, or was just beginning, and the condemned man fishes his clothes out of the pit, because there's sort of like a hole next to this apparatus, and that's where the apparatus then spits out the body, and it's just buried right there. So it's essentially, the pit serves as the executed, the dead man's grave afterwards. But so the officer, he lets the condemned man go. He himself strips naked, and he then lays on the bed, and the straps, like, the machine comes alive, and it's as if, like, because this is such an honored, it knows the machine has become like sentient, and it knows this not only as its last execution, but it's such an honored one, or it's executing such a coveted person that was there during the epoch of everything, right? The beginning, the inception of everything, and its birth, I guess, right? Had played a role in its birth, and almost as the midwife, right, of this piece of apparatus, pulled it out of the uterus. Of Satan's fucking uterus. Okay, so anyway, so yeah, the officer strips naked, and this machine accepts him. The straps strap themselves around the officer's arm. The gag, comes up to the officer's mouth. He sort of, he feels a bit unsettled. He's a bit unsettled and hesitant, but then he does accept it, and the machine begins working flawlessly at first, which is interesting because when it was the condemned man to be executed initially, there was a portion that was making a horrendous, it was making a noise, right? A horrendous, like, noise. But now it's sort of quiet and it's working flawlessly, or so it seems. But then the machine begins to come apart. And as it's coming apart, begins violently, instead of artistically carving the sentence. And what does he choose to be his the commandment he has broken? It is said that, because the officer shows the explorer the blueprints, and he reads to him, "Be just, be just." So I guess he hasn't been a just hangman, right? He's not a just executioner. Over all these years, I guess so. Or at least what he does now is no longer considered just. So he has broken the commandments, and he's choosing to be executed. And what's also interesting is is that this piece of apparatus is so brilliant that it's almost that it's kind of an honor to be executed by it. And yeah, even though it's killing you, it's I don't know, it's what a way to die, I guess, what a way to go out. It's also perhaps doing you a favor. By turning you into something of an art piece or a piece of entertainment, a final act, right? Allowing you to perform a final act for viewers, for the spectators' pleasure. So anyway, this thing takes him, and it's meant to carve be just, but it begins malfunctioning. The cog wheels go flying out of the designer until there are none left, and the harrow is stabbing him relentlessly. And once it's finished stabbing him, it tries to slide out and then throw his body into the pit, pitch him into the pit, but he just becomes stuck on these needles. And then the explorer is saying, "Help me get him off the needles." He's saying this to the condemned man and the soldier, and they're sort of reluctant at first to help him, but then they try, but they can't get this guy off the needles, off the harrow. They can't get the officer off the harrow. And they sort of all go. They go, and for whatever reason, the soldier and the condemned man take him to this tea house where the former commandant is buried. And it is prophesized Okay, so I'll read the last paragraph. Okay, so there is a prophecy that after a certain number of years, the commandant will rise again and lead his adherents from this house to recover the colony. Have faith and wait. When the explorer had read this and risen to his feet, because the old commandant is buried at this tea house, underneath of a table, right, lies his tombstone in his burial grounds. So, have faith and wait. When the explorer had read this and risen to his feet, he saw all the bystanders around him smiling, as if they too had read the inscription, had found it ridiculous, and were expecting him to agree with them. The explorer ignored this, distributed a few coins among them, waiting till the table was pushed over the grave again, quitted the tea house, and made for the harbor. The soldier and the condemned man had found some acquaintances in the tea house who detained them, but they must have soon shaken them off, for the explorer was only halfway down the long flight of steps leading to the boats when they came rushing after him. Probably they wanted to force him at the last minute to take them with him, while he was bargaining below with the ferryman to row him to the steamer. The two of them came headlong down the steps in silence, for they did not dare to shout. But by the time they reached the foot of the steps, the explorer was already in the boat, and the ferryman was just casting off from the shore. They could have jumped into the boat, but the explorer lifted a heavy knotted rope from the floorboards, threatened them with it, and so kept them from attempting to leap. So... yeah, there was this prophecy posed by the old commandant, I guess, that eventually somebody new would come about and lead them once more, lead the colony back to an old way of living, right? But that's sort of where the story ends, is the explorer making off and getting the hell out of there. and the soldier and the condemned man tried to jump on to the ferry, to the boat, try to jump onto the boat with him, with the explorer, but the explorer like has this rope, and he threatens to whip them if they would try to jump on. So yeah, I found it to be a quite an interesting story. I think I thought for a moment that, like, in some weird roundabout way, the explorer was going to seize power as the new commandant and hold a revolt against the current commandant and lead them back into sort of a barbarous, old way of living, I guess. But that's, that didn't happen, clearly. So, yeah, a good story. Kafka's a tremendous writer. He has such a deep understanding of human psychology and, and what the mind experiences going through what living in a modern society does to the human mind and does to each one of us, and how it sort of makes us feel, and painting these, with words, these vivid descriptions of, and producing these vivid plots that are manifestations of how we feel on the inside, lost in a modern world, and how absurd everything seems at times to us. But knowing that we have no choice but to sort of put our head down and keep going, because this is what sort of everybody else does. And, you wonder if everyone sort of stopped and paused for a moment. Could we change anything? What's preventing us from all coming together and living in peace and harmony and love and affection, as opposed to, being defined by hate and tyranny and crime and punishment? Nothing is preventing that, except ourselves, I guess. But hats off to Kafka, right? He's a great writer. So yeah, I wanted to make this video about in the penal colony, and just about his biography. And thanks for watching. More videos to come. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Happy New Year.